Welcome, everyone. Today is July 6th, and we are here once again with Dr. Jeff Andresen to talk about our current weather forecast and see what conditions are going to be in the upcoming week. So, Jeff, we look forward to your report and go ahead when you are ready.
Will do. Thanks, Kevin. And see if you can see my screen yet. A nice little 4th of July reminder. Hopefully everyone had a restful and worthwhile weekend here. Weather-wise, it turned out to be pretty summer-like. But in the world of weather weirdness, we have seen lots of this year, whether it be late spring freezes, drought, heavy rain, severe weather. We've had about it all. But here's one that you may not have thought about, but certainly probably can appreciate if you were again in Michigan this past several days. Where we are in the mid latitudes, we typically have air masses from both the high latitudes and some cases even the Arctic, and that's of course countered by air masses out of the subtropics and sometimes even out of tropical areas. We're right in that battleground in between. But one thing we frequently see, and I use this term a lot, Canadian origin air mass moved into the area. And of course, almost always the first thing we think about, cool, dry, and of course that can be a really blessing in the summer to have that cool, dry air. It can be the opposite and be a curse if it occurs in January, February, or in the late winter, early spring. Well, this weekend we had something that rarely, and I don't actually recall this ever happening, but we had a warm frontal passage from a Canadian air mass. So we actually had a hot, dry air mass, and this one is a special one because it's the remnants of the record-breaking heat wave out in the Pacific Northwest and in Western Canada. And while it's not nearly as hot as it was here a week ago, we're really it was sort of the northeastern fringe of that. And that's all these maps I've got here. Again, just a couple of odds and ends. The one on the top here is a surface map showing conditions, high and low pressure patterns on the surface. And you can see here actually a couple areas with this red line here. That's a warm front. And we actually had, again, something you just never see meteorologically, but a warm front coming from the northwest to southeast, bringing warmer air. And again, it's almost always the opposite. And if you look at the map just below that, that's a jet stream here. And you can see almost a north to south flow with that big ridge. This is the big ridge that caused all of the problems in the Western US, but it's in the process of shrinking, of de-amplifying. And again, some of that hot air is there, but just not nearly as extreme as it was at one time. These are air temperatures. All of this, these are all taken here Saturday morning to give you a snapshot. This actually happened over a pattern or over a period of a day or so. But all of these really bright colors here, much warmer air. It was in the 90s even in the morning on Saturday. But this air mass essentially rounded that came out of British Columbia and Alberta, and with this upper air feature moved then down to the south and east into the lower 48 and brought hot, dry, or a piece of hot, dry air southward, which we just don't ever see. Now, finally, here on the far lower right-hand side here, this is a special map. This is looking at smoke concentration in the atmosphere, because one of the things that this air mass also pulled along with it as it moved to the south and east was a large amount of smoke from forest fires that are out in Western Canada, in British Columbia and Alberta, and that was brought all the way around. Most of this was between 3,000 and 7,000 feet above the surface, and because the air at that layer did not really mix with what was down below, we only saw sort of a thick haze up there. We didn't smell the smoke, which we would have. If you would have had a plane or been able to go up to that level, you would easily smell the smoke. But you can see here, again, in the lower right, fairly large, high concentrations of smoke up in that layer. And that's what resulted, or what led to the sort of the hazy conditions, and then some of the dull colors at sunset because of the sun refracting through that mix of air and smoke. So again, another one on the list here for a weird meteor. We probably, who knows when we'll see the next time we get a Canadian warm front, but there was one over the weekend. So if anybody ever asks you, is it possible to get a warm front out of Canada? The answer, yeah, theoretically, yes, but it rarely ever happens, but it did this past weekend. So over the past week, it was a warmer than normal week. Looking back here on the left-hand side here, Mean temperatures averaged about 2 to as much as 5 degrees above normal across the state. And depending on where you were, a couple places, especially western upper Michigan, where there was 2 to 3 inches, that was the heaviest rainfall that we saw during the last week. We saw an inch to an inch and a half in portions of northern lower, and then across this extreme southern lower, with an area in between across central lower Michigan that picked up less than half an inch. So drier than normal conditions there. So again, it depended on location, but a big change from where we were last week with all of the heavy rain that fell then, and including some of that area of central lower Michigan that had a lot of precip. Our soil moisture conditions here for most of the state declined. Relative moisture here, or plant available or extractable moisture in the top 3 feet. You can see generally that the driest conditions have shifted to the northern lower here over the last couple of weeks following the heavy rain 2 weeks ago. This on the lower right hand side here, this is the plant extractable moisture in the same layer, but the change relative to the past week. And for most except portions of the Upper Peninsula, you can see brown and orange colors here indicating we decreased a few percent in that plant extractable water. So that's not a surprise given the time of the year and relatively high potential evapotranspiration rates. So again, relatively normal conditions, but for the drier than the normal areas, we did see some loss of topsoil or moisture, especially in the topsoil layer. We did see further improvements in the U.S. Drought Monitor. This is the current version, which goes back again as of a week ago Tuesday, was released on Thursday. But the percentage of, I think most significant, the percentage of Michigan in terms of area and the D2 severe drought declined or decreased from 22% the previous week down to only 5%. And you can see now the driest area of the state here, at least as identified by this product, portions of the Thumb, the Saginaw Valley, and then still a patch over in the northwestern lower up just to Traverse City and southward. But most of the rest of the state, there were definitely improvements and a reduction. And that isn't a surprise, again, given all the rain that fell previously. But as we have said, depending on what we see weather-wise here over the next few weeks, there certainly could be a return or more problems with dryness given the long-term nature, especially in some parts of the state where the deficits have been around for a long time. Degree day totals for the week, generally 100 to 150 base 50 units accumulated over the last week. And on the lower right-hand side here, that still leaves most of the state. These are seasonal totals beginning March 1, several days to about a week, maybe 8 days or so ahead of normal. So we're still running ahead of normal in terms of heat accumulation for the season. Looking ahead, we're looking at a pretty active weather pattern, especially for the next couple of days. On the weather map this morning here, you can see a cold frontal boundary up to an area of low pressure here over Quebec. And then off to our west, you can see a diffuse area of low pressure with some precipitation. And down the lower left-hand side here, this is the radar as of about 15 minutes ago. You can see a large area of generally light to moderate rain with some embedded rumbles of thunder here. That's all moving to the east towards Michigan. And that's going to be the big weather maker here for the next 24 to 36 hours. So during the day today, watch for, especially across upper Michigan, watch for rain developing, showers and thunderstorms developing. And then this whole system, as we move into the next couple of days, is going to spread to the south and east across the remainder of the state later today, tonight, tomorrow, and then into Thursday before it finally moves to the south of the state and set the stage for a couple of wet days. Friday looks dry at this point in time. If you're wondering about Tropical Storm Elsa down here in the Gulf of Mexico off Florida, that will be moving to the north and make landfall somewhere, possibly even as a hurricane, a minimal hurricane in Florida. But the big news there is that the upper air stirring currents are going to move that or veer that off to the east. That won't have any influence on us at all. Really, the big issue is this weather system. And then behind that, much more typical, we talked about Canadian air masses. Well, this one is a typical Canadian air mass for this time of year and has a much cooler and at least temporarily some drier air with it. For the northern part of the state, this is going to set the stage for beautiful conditions here later this week into the weekend. But after this next weather system moves through. This is tomorrow morning. You can see that this whole frontal boundary sags south and eastward. Best chances for rain, as I mentioned, will be today in the north, central areas here tomorrow, and then in the southeast part of the state overnight Wednesday into Thursday as the system gradually sags, not moving anywhere quickly. This is Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. You can see lingering rainfall for the southeast with cooler and drier conditions here moving in across the north. Now, after that, I mentioned dry conditions on Friday, but then we will have another weather system. You can see it's out here across the northern Great Plains that will approach, but move to the south of the state over the weekend and set the stage for it, what looks like a fairly unsettled pattern. And we'll call it at this point in time, the southern half of the state, with scattered showers and thunderstorms to the north of that, but especially the farther south you go in Michigan here on Saturday, Sunday, even into Monday, there will be the high likelihood of more rainfall. Some of it could be fairly significant. There's actually a chance we could see some heavy rainfall. That's a little bit out there at this point in time, but there will be probably significant rainfall across southern portions of the state here this weekend, dry, fair, and cool in northern parts of the state. So when we add everything together here collectively for the next 7 days, you can see anywhere from less than a half an inch total over the far north to better than an inch across, southern sections of the state to maybe as much as 2 inches across the far south. Now, the heavy totals you see down here across the south and then in areas to our south and west, that's mostly associated with that weather system, again, I mentioned for the upcoming weekend. The rainfall in the northern part of the state is what's basically expected here over the next day or two. But for much of the state, you can see significant rainfall is expected here, at least over the next few days, and then maybe more over the weekend. Potential evapotranspiration rates with cooler temperatures expected here by the weekend will be somewhere in the order of about 0.14 to 0.17 inches per day on average, with higher totals, of course, in the south. But our temperatures, especially in northern areas, will be remaining below normal for much of the upcoming few days. Highs generally, we will have, and need to make a caveat on that, for today and even tomorrow, we will still see above normal temperatures in across far southern parts of the state, well into the 80s to near 90, contrasted with some 60s in the far north as that Canadian air moves in. And then generally by the weekend, we'll be looking at highs in the 70s, lows generally in the 50s. So not too far away, fairly pleasant conditions, a little bit of a moderation as we move out to the early part of next week back towards normal. But especially in northern parts of the state, this likely will be a cooler than normal week here that we're looking at. Now, in the medium range forecast guidance, it has been consistent for some time with a message of warming and going back to above normal temperatures. And for both the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks, you can see that indicated here. But note that Michigan, again, is close to an area of a gradient with normal to above normal mean temperatures forecast, but not very far away. You can see cooler than normal conditions just off to our south and west a little bit. The other message that's been consistent here, at least over the last couple of days, is more precip. And so this particular outlook, also the 8 to 14 day outlook, does call for above normal precipitation totals. That had not been the case. We were looking here as recently as late last week, but the theme towards warmer temperatures has been consistent. What has been not, or a little bit of a surprise, is that the current weather in the next few days, it definitely, we're going to see some cool air out of the higher latitudes out of Canada. And that's certainly going to prevent us from being anywhere near above normal, at least for several days. If we see this, it won't be probably until at least the middle to latter part of next week. But that is the message in the medium range guidance. It continues to say that, even though in the short term, it does look cooler, at least towards the end of this week and this weekend. We did get a revised outlook here for the month of July, and this is consistent with that medium range guidance we saw last week. But you can see warmer than normal conditions are forecast for the entire really northern half of the lower 48, including Michigan, and then Michigan in between areas of drier than normal conditions to our west and wetter than normal conditions to our south. That's also been consistent. And again, based on the guidance, there's fairly high confidence in this, but the jet stream has a way of making liars of the meteorologists sometimes. I won't say take it with a grain of salt, but even as consistent as this outlook has been, we'll have to watch, because the cooler weather that's coming here for late in the week and the weekend is a little bit of a surprise, and at least for me, in all honesty, and I think it was for many. And it certainly makes one think about this medium range guidance. But that's officially what the outlook's calling for. So wrapping up here, again, very summer-like for the southern parts of Michigan. Cool, and after unsettled conditions, showers and thunderstorms moving from northwest to southeast over the next couple of days, and then a very pleasant, cool, fair weekend. If you're up north, it's going to be gorgeous weather here for late in the week, contrasted with more unsettled weather across the south, with the possibilities of heavy rain, especially on Saturday and Sunday as we get into the south. And then as we just concluded here, looking at the medium range, it's still saying warmer than normal, but we'll have to keep an eye. Don't bet the farm just yet on that one. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
Thanks, Jeff. So kind of typical summer, with the exception that we can maybe get a break from the air conditioners for a couple days this week before it maybe heats up again.
Right. And again, if you're going to go up north, it's just going to be delightful, relatively cool, relatively low humidities, fair skies. It should just be almost optimal, and not so much as you go south, as it turns out, but we obviously need our water needs are high this time. So we should pick up again as you saw, most of the heaviest rainfall will probably be across southern portions of the state once again here before we talk next week.
Excellent. Well, let's just hope it's not those 5-6 inch rain events or whatever we had that really caused some havoc in especially southeast corner of the state. So thanks, Jeff. Look forward to seeing you again next week, and have a great rest of the week for a short work week coming off the holiday.
We'll see you next week.
Okay.